I said, yeah, because I really like Chris Robinson's vocals. I thought he was tremendous, and I knew he was tremendous. He did a version of Stairway that had a choir and an orchestra, and then after the guitar, well, it was with the...
In an exclusive revelation that might make your emo ex shed a nostalgic tear, music wizard Jimmy Page finally confessed that 10 Years Gone isn't just a song. It's a full-blown emotional cathedral built from the bricks of heartbreak and the cement of sonic perfectionism. Imagine a rock legend who could melt amplifiers with a single chord suddenly sitting down and whispering, "Let me tell you about a girl who ghosted me a decade ago." Yep, that's the secret sauce behind this track. Unlike your typical Love Gone Wrong anthem with screaming vocals and dramatic eyeliner, this masterpiece was born from the kind of inner ache you bottle up for 10 years until your guitar strings beg for therapy. Page didn't just strum his feelings, he layered guitar over guitar like he was making lasagna for the soul. Each lick had a backstory, each riff a ghost of decisions not made, paths not taken, and one girl who said, "Sorry Jim, I'm out of here." Instead of swiping left on fate, Page went full Renaissance mode and constructed a song so grand it could have doubled as a soundtrack for a Shakespearean breakup in space. He obsessed over tone like a chef fine-tuning a Michelin star risotto, playing the same part over and over not because it was bad, but because it wasn't heart-wrenching enough. "I wanted every guitar to breathe," he said, possibly while meditating with a Stratocaster. And breathe they did. When Plant's vocals come in, they don't just sing. They hover above the music like a ghost whispering, "Told you I was unforgettable." The result? A sonic experience where you can feel every layer of regret, acceptance, and that bittersweet twinge that hits you when you see your ex living her best life in Bali on Instagram while you're still decoding what she meant by, "I need space." But instead of wallowing, Page turned pain into power. This wasn't a track made for stadium fist pumps. It was a confessional booth wrapped in reverb. It was delicate, honest, possibly the only Led Zeppelin song where even the amps seemed like they needed a group hug, and the audience felt it too. It wasn't just the guitar solos or the wistful lyrics, it was the emotional honesty Page slipped between the notes like secret messages in a breakup diary. And funny enough, for a song about someone who left him behind, 10 Years Gone might be the very reason the world will never forget him. Up next, the song that taught Page how to turn the Grim Reaper into his personal backing vocalist. And no, we're not kidding. Stay tuned. And now, dear viewers, as we wipe the emotional leftovers from that bittersweet melody casserole, known as 10 Years Gone, we dive deeper into the sorcery behind the song that transformed a decades-old heartbreak into a Grammy-worthy meditation on time, choices, and probably why it's not a great idea to date someone who hates musicians. Jimmy Page didn't just write a song here, he erected a sonic time machine where every chord feels like a Polaroid of a missed opportunity, and every reverb drip sounds like a quiet "what if" yelled into the cosmic void. But don't let the poetic mist fool you. This wasn't some impulsive jam session while sipping tea in a bathrobe. No, Page treated this song like a sacred quest. He built it layer by layer, guitar upon guitar, as if auditioning for emotional Tetris on expert mode. Each part wasn't just recorded. It was lovingly obsessed over until even the guitar cables were probably begging for a nap. The studio turned into his therapy room, and the amp, bless its fried circuits, became his unofficial shrink. The vibe wasn't "let's make a hit," it was "let's empty the emotional attic and make it sound beautiful." But perhaps the most magical twist in this tale is that Page didn't shout or scream or light his guitar on fire like a caffeinated rock deity. No, he whispered truths through melodies that hit harder than any pyrotechnic solo ever could. And when Plant's voice layered itself over that sea of layered guitar emotion, it wasn't singing, it was aching in perfect pitch. The performance wasn't just vulnerable, it was a musical open wound that somehow made the crowd feel healed instead of wounded. Live audiences didn't headbang. They stared into the middle distance with glassy eyes, wondering why they suddenly missed someone they hadn't met yet. This was Zeppelin at their softest, and yet, weirdly, their most powerful. Page essentially stripped off the mystical cape and wizard hat and said, "Hey, I feel things too," and the crowd responded like, "Bro, same." And for the man who had built his entire career around thunder and lightning riffs, this song was the soft rain afterward, the moment of quiet that reveals the soul behind the storm. 10 Years Gone isn't just a track. It's a sonic diary entry sealed with the tears of a guitar legend and sent into the universe to say, sometimes the past sounds better with distortion. Coming up next, what happens when Jimmy Page resurrects a dusty old blues track and gives it the kind of makeover that could wake the dead? Grab your holy water and hold on to your fretboards. We're entering resurrection territory. Ladies and gentlemen, if you thought 10 Years Gone was the teary-eyed confessional of a guitar monk, then buckle up your seatbelts and tighten your strings. Because In My Time of Dying is where Jimmy Page decided to stop crying and start summoning the musical spirits of the underworld. Blues Edition. This track didn't come out of a glossy record label meeting or a midnight epiphany with incense and starlight.
No, sir, it came straight from the crypt of ancient blues.
A song that had lived 9 lives in smoky bars and dusty vinyl, only to be yanked back into the limelight by Mr. Page and given a full rock and roll resurrection. The original blues version whispered about mortality, regret, and the ticking of the final clock. But Page took that whisper, plugged it into an amp, fed it espresso, and turned it into an 11-minute cosmic sermon where guitars scream, drums crash like divine thunder, and vocal cords sound like they've seen the afterlife and demanded a refund. This wasn't a song, it was a sonic exorcism. Page's slide guitar didn't play notes. It cried, moaned, and occasionally wailed like a haunted banshee with perfect pitch. Bonham's drums didn't keep time, they threatened it, and Plant, oh sweet Robert Plant, didn't just sing. He channeled something that sounded like a southern preacher on fire during a lightning storm inside a cathedral made of sweat. Live performances of this beastly anthem felt less like concerts and more like interdimensional rituals where the crowd swayed like possessed pilgrims and Page acted as the high priest of groove-driven salvation. And let's not forget, this song wasn't just about dying. No, it was about triumphing over it, body slamming it with every slide riff and drum fill. Page didn't write a eulogy. He threw a resurrection party and every instrument showed up wearing black leather and sunglasses. When asked about it years later, Page said something like, "You could feel it in the room," which is code for, "We accidentally summoned rock and roll Valhalla and decided to jam with the ghosts." The band didn't aim for radio airplay, they aimed for eternal echo. In My Time of Dying is proof that blues never really dies. It just gets louder, groovier, and occasionally rocks so hard that your speakers start sweating. Up next, what happens when Page decides to play the blues so raw, even his amplifier starts needing emotional support. It's the musical equivalent of screaming into a pillow, but with distortion. Now, if you thought In My Time of Dying was just a lengthy blues jam with extra seasoning, allow me, your trusted musical news correspondent, to correct that sweet misconception with a flaming slide guitar and a wink. This wasn't just a song, folks. This was Jimmy Page constructing a stairway, not to heaven, but to the front porch of the afterlife, complete with smoke machines, divine reverb, and Bonham beating the drums like they owed him money. Imagine a musical seance where the guitars speak in tongues, the drums argue with thunderclouds, and Robert Plant's vocals pierce the air like a banshee auditioning for the opera. That's the raw intensity we're talking about here. When Page first decided to bring this blues relic back to life, he didn't just dust it off. He reanimated it, Frankensteined it, and hooked it up to the biggest amp he could find. Suddenly, a somber Delta hymn about life's final curtain call became a full-blown rock opera with enough voltage to make your ancestors boogie in their graves. The studio itself must have filed a noise complaint against the band, because what came out wasn't just music, it was thunder in high definition. And while many guitarists would be tempted to show off their 6-string acrobatics in an 11-minute track, Page did the unthinkable. He made restraint sound explosive, every note bent with emotional weight. Every slide was like a sob translated into sound waves. And just when you thought he'd hit the peak, he'd twist that slide again, like he was tuning into a spiritual frequency just above FM. Bonham's drumming didn't merely keep rhythm, it shouted back at mortality like, "Not today, Grim Reaper!" And Plant, bless his golden vocal cords, wailed like someone who knew the end was near, but refused to go quietly, unless it was with a killer solo. But here's where the humor of fate kicks in. A song about dying became one of the most alive tracks in Zeppelin's discography. Go figure. Page turned finality into fire. Death? More like a dramatic costume change before the encore. And let's be real. If you were at one of their live shows when this song hit, you didn't just listen, You held your breath like you were about to meet your musical maker. In My Time of Dying proved that blues can rise from the ashes, scream in Technicolor, and still make you contemplate the big questions, like whether your soul has a favorite guitar pedal. Up next, when Page ditches the spiritual firestorm and heads into pure heartache territory, complete with bleeding riffs and one-take tears. Don't touch that dial. We're about to get raw, bluesy, and possibly cry into our guitar picks. And now, dear viewers, we enter the bluesy danger zone where even the amplifiers look emotionally unstable. Because Since I've Been Loving You isn't just a song, it's a slow-motion heartbreak explosion disguised as a one-take studio miracle. In what might be the most audibly raw therapy session ever recorded, Jimmy Page picked up his guitar and basically said, "Hold my feelings. I'm about to cry in E minor." Unlike most overproduced rock ballads with enough overdubs to qualify for witness protection, this one was performed live in studio with zero backup plans, no auto-tune safety net, and definitely no "let's fix it in post." Just four emotionally vulnerable dudes in a room bleeding sound like they accidentally stepped on a Lego made of memories. From the very first wail of the guitar, you know you're in for a ride that doesn't end with a kiss goodbye. It ends with your heart left in a blender set to "I Weep." Page's tone on this track wasn't just bluesy. It was bluesy with a hint of "someone has my dog's soul trapped in this amp." Every bend, every moan from that fretboard felt like a diary entry you weren't supposed to read, but can't stop listening to. And then Robert Plant joins the emotional circus with vocals so shaky, you'd think he just found out his favorite boots ran away with his best friend. It wasn't polished, it was painfully human. Bonham's drums weren't just beats. They were the sound of your heartbeat breaking in slow 6/8 time. And John Paul Jones, bless his solid bass-wielding soul, was holding the whole band together like emotional duct tape. Page had spent years decoding the secrets of blues legends, but this wasn't mimicry. It was full immersion. He didn't just play like the greats. He bled like them, sweated like them, cried into the guitar case like them. He once said he wanted his guitar to sound like someone trying not to break down. And sweet riffing Zeus, he nailed it. It's the kind of tone that says, "I'm fine," but the notes scream, "I'm absolutely not okay." Recording this wasn't just an artistic process. It was a musical exorcism where every demon wore bell-bottoms and wailed in pentatonic scales. You can practically hear Plant holding back sobs between lines, while Page's guitar solo asks, "Are we sure love is worth it?" And just when you think it couldn't get any more emotionally nuclear, the band wraps it all up without a single extra take, because apparently, ripping out your heart and handing it to the mixing board only needs one try. Coming up next, how this bluesy meltdown became Zeppelin's secret weapon at live shows, and why Page never played it the same way twice. Spoiler alert, real pain doesn't follow a set list. Stay tuned. If Since I've Been Loving You was recorded in a single take, then live performances of it were like emotional Russian roulette. Nobody, not even the band, knew which feelings would explode next. And that's precisely what made it so hypnotically powerful. Every time Led Zeppelin played it live, Jimmy Page didn't just perform. He soul-screamed through his guitar like it owed him rent and emotional stability. One night the solo might sound like a gentle cry into the moonlight, and the next it was a full-blown sonic tantrum worthy of an Oscar and 3 therapy sessions. This was the blues stripped bare, dipped in heartbreak, and roasted over an open flame of raw vulnerability. Page wasn't noodling on the fretboard. He was confessing sins, writing apology letters and chord progressions, and possibly dragging the ghost of every bad breakup he ever had onto the stage for one last argument. Plant, on the other hand, treated the mic like a heartbreak hotline operator who just got dumped himself. His voice cracked, soared, collapsed, and whispered through verses like he'd been ghosted mid-tour and wanted the world to know about it. And let's not forget Bonham. His drumming wasn't just keeping time, it was punching time in the face for daring to pass while hearts were breaking. With every crash of the cymbal, you could practically hear him say, "Love hurts, and so will this snare." John Paul Jones held the whole performance down like the only emotionally grounded person in a room full of friends ugly crying into microphones and guitar amps. But here's the kicker, no two performances were the same. Page once said the blues changes with your mood. And boy, did it. One night, the crowd got the sorrowful Page who seemed like he just watched a sad puppy commercial. The next night, Angry Page, whose solo sounded like he'd just gotten cut off in traffic by his ex driving a new car. And audiences loved it. They didn't come to hear the same exact solo. They came to feel something, anything. And this song delivered like an express train straight into their feels. It was Zeppelin's emotional Trojan horse. Amid all the fire, thunder, and dragon-summoning riffs of their setlist, this song crept in soft, moaned a little, then hit listeners in the chest with a steel-toed boot of honesty. For Page, it was never about perfection. It was about presence. He didn't need the notes to be mathematically precise. He needed them to feel like heartbreak had fingers. And somehow, even while the band melted souls on stage, the crowd found comfort in the chaos, as if watching grown men cry through instruments made their own mess feel a little less lonely. Coming up next, when a snarky critic said Led Zeppelin couldn't write a ballad, and Jimmy Page decided to drown him in acoustic guitar magic and poetic drizzle. Oh yes, it's about to rain, beautifully. Now let's talk about the time Jimmy Page got so hilariously offended by a critic's snarky remark that he didn't just prove them wrong. He composed an emotional thundercloud and named it The Rain Song. The tale goes like this. Some bold journalist, probably wearing tweed and chewing on misplaced sarcasm, declared that Led Zeppelin couldn't write ballads. And instead of sending an angry letter or flipping over a table of microphones, Page took the high road by writing the most achingly beautiful musical drizzle storm ever recorded. Yes, folks, The Rain Song was a clapback, but make it poetic. Page didn't pick up his electric guitar and unleash thunder. No, he sat down with his acoustic like a heartbroken wizard and began crafting a love letter to subtlety. This wasn't about ego, it was about elegance. He layered gentle strums and floating chords like he was finger-painting mist. No fire, no fury, just the soft patter of melodies on the soul's window pane. The whole thing felt like taking a walk through emotional fog with someone who once mattered but now lives only in your Spotify sadness playlist. And just when you think it couldn't get more vulnerable, enter Robert Plant, whispering and wailing like he'd just reread an old breakup text while the kettle boiled. His vocals didn't just complement the music, they curled around it like steam. He didn't belt notes, he sighed them into existence. The lyrics didn't scream, "Look at me." They gently tapped you on the shoulder and asked, "Remember when love felt like this?" It was delicate, deliberate, and drenched in mood. Even Bonham, usually the guy breaking drums like he's in a bar fight with rhythm, showed restraint. He tiptoed through the track with brushes and taste, letting the quiet breathe. Meanwhile, Page was layering acoustic textures with the precision of someone building a love nest out of sound. He added strings, space, and just the right amount of swelling emotion to make you question your life choices by verse 2. He once said he wanted the song to feel like actual rain. And somehow, through musical wizardry and maybe a sprinkle of fairy dust, he nailed it. You don't just hear this song. You smell the wet grass, you see the clouds gathering over the chorus, and by the time the bridge hits, you're emotionally drenched but weirdly grateful. The Rain Song didn't just prove they could write a ballad. It proved they could whisper while the world screamed. And in doing so, Page redefined what powerful meant in rock music. No amps exploded, no dragons summoned. Just heart, harmony, and a gentle storm that quietly clapped back at every critic who ever doubted them. Coming up next, how this soft, rainy anthem shocked live audiences who came expecting thunder and instead left misty-eyed and whispering, "Okay, maybe I am in my feelings tonight." Stay tuned for the second downpour. Picture this, a roaring crowd of rock fans, leather jackets on, beer in hand, fully expecting the next Zeppelin song to be a thunderous wall of sound that punches their eyebrows off. Instead, drip, drip, here comes the Rain Song, gliding in like a melancholic swan with impeccable hair. And as Jimmy Page strummed those first velvety chords, the crowd didn't bang their heads. They blinked slowly, swayed awkwardly, and whispered things like, "Bro, why do I feel things?" Because that, my friends, was the true power of this ballad. It was emotional sabotage wrapped in 6 strings. Live, the Rain Song became the moment when the concert took a detour through the clouds and your heart. It didn't just slow the pace, it shifted the universe. Page played like he was trying to paint the sky in 4K resolution using only fretboard sorcery. The acoustic layers floated into the air like incense at a yoga retreat run by rock gods. And Robert Plant? Oh, he didn't sing. He breathed poetry into the mic like a Victorian ghost recounting his last love affair. The lyrics rolled out of him like teardrops down velvet curtains. And even the sound crew probably paused and said, I wasn't ready for this emotional ambush. Meanwhile, Bonham, usually known for beating his drums like they stole his lunch money, became a percussion ninja. Every brushstroke and cymbal whisper felt intentional, like he was drumming with feathers dipped in longing. John Paul Jones floated underneath it all with a keyboard bed so lush it made the synths sound like they were exhaling. Audiences didn't just listen. They melted. Some held hands. Some cried in denim. One guy reportedly proposed to his girlfriend during the outro. True story? Probably. The unexpected tenderness of this track became a Trojan horse in the middle of a hard rock warhorse setlist. Just when you thought Zeppelin was all about dragons and distortion, the Rain song showed up with a latte, a blanket, and the softest uppercut to your emotions. It changed the band's image, not just in the press but in the hearts of their fans. Suddenly, Led Zeppelin wasn't just the band that made your speakers bleed. They were the band that made your soul sniffle. And all because Jimmy Page wanted to clap back at one guy who said, "They can't do slow songs." Oh, they did it. They rained on every critic's parade and made it beautiful. Coming up next, buckle your seatbelts and grab your time-traveling goggles because we're entering the sonic monument known as Kashmir, a song that didn't just rock, it summoned ancient spirits with a guitar tuned by the gods. Stay tuned, it's about to get mystically loud. And now, dear viewers, we arrive at the thunderous elephant in the mystical room, Kashmir, the track that didn't just break musical rules, it threw them into the desert, lit them on fire, and rode away on a camel made of guitar strings and wizard energy. If most songs are written, then Kashmir was unearthed like a sacred artifact. Page didn't compose it, he excavated it, possibly while wearing aviator shades and humming in dadgad tuning. This riff didn't emerge from a casual jam. It came from a place so deep, scholars are still trying to translate the vibes. The tuning was heresy to traditional rock theory. The rhythm refused to follow logic. The melody looped like a hypnotic mirage. But to Page, it all made glorious, desert-scorched sense. He wasn't just riffing, he was summoning. The sound didn't just evoke distant lands. It practically applied for a passport and took you there. Think dunes, think monsoons. Think the soundtrack to a sandstorm inside a temple lit by laser beams and incense. Once Bonham's drums joined the procession, boom, crash, boom. They didn't just keep time. They sounded like a thunder god stomping rhythm into stone. Robert Plant's voice floated above it all like some kind of celestial falcon, giving a TED talk about wanderlust and spiritual enlightenment. And the best part? This wasn't psychedelic fluff. It was heavy. But heavy in the way ancient monuments are heavy. Epic, solid, eternal. Page added orchestral layers and exotic textures like he was building a pyramid out of sonic bricks. He didn't just want the song to sound big. He wanted it to feel like the universe tilted sideways. Recording it was like juggling sandstorms and laser beams. Every note, every echo, every booming beat had to land with prophetic purpose. And it did. Kashmir wasn't Zeppelin's loudest song. It was their most ambitious spell. Page later admitted he became obsessed with perfecting it, playing the riff over and over like he was trying to crack the code to some ancient melody buried in the crust of the earth. Critics called it progressive, fans called it spiritual, but Page? He said it touched something eternal, and judging by the goosebumps erupting on everyone's arms, we believe him. Up next, how Kashmir Live turned into a musical exorcism where the riff didn't just rock the house, it rearranged your atoms. Grab your compass and your incense, folks. This sonic pilgrimage isn't over yet. If you thought the studio version of Kashmir was a musical sandstorm with a passport to the divine, then the live performance was what happened when that sandstorm decided to throw a stadium-sized spiritual rave. Let's be clear, when Led Zeppelin played Kashmir on stage, it didn't feel like a rock concert anymore. It felt like a full-on interdimensional ritual led by Jimmy Page, who looked less like a guitarist and more like a shaman, channeling the ancient gods of groove through a guitar tuned by space druids. The moment the first riff thundered into the crowd, you could see the faces in the audience change from "Woo yeah" to "Did I just see the face of a Sumerian deity blink at me from the smoke machine?" This wasn't just music, it was architecture made of sound, each note a pillar, each beat a carved inscription in the temple of rock. Page would stand center stage, stoic and mysterious, summoning the riff like he was opening a dimensional portal with each strum. Bonham's drums pounded like an army of war elephants doing a choreographed march across the sands of time. Plant's voice didn't just soar, It floated like a silk scarf caught in a cosmic breeze, painting images of deserts, dreams, and distant lands on every syllable. Audiences weren't just listening, they were levitating. You'd see people close their eyes, arms out, swaying like they were trying to catch the scent of enlightenment carried on a drop-D wind. Some probably forgot what planet they were on. Others might have reached nirvana, filed a complaint, and come back just in time for the final chorus. Page didn't play Kashmir the same way twice, because ancient magic doesn't follow blueprints. He would stretch notes like he was bending time itself, dialing in tones so rich they made the Earth's crust vibrate just a little bit out of tune. It was less about technical perfection, and more about tapping into the kind of primal feeling that makes your spine tingle and your third eye blink twice. Kashmir Live wasn't a track, it was an event. An audio eclipse, a musical possession where the band became the vessel and the riff took the wheel. Critics tried to define it with words like epic, transcendent, or genre-defying. But let's be honest, those words are just fancy ways of saying, I have no idea what happened, but I now worship the riff. For Jimmy Page, Kashmir was more than a song. It was the pinnacle, the spell he'd spent a career preparing to cast. A testament that guitar music could be as cosmic, spiritual, and emotionally radioactive as any symphony or sacred chant. And as the final notes rang out, echoing into the cosmos, fans didn't cheer. They exhaled, because they hadn't just watched a performance. They'd gone on a journey through time, space, and soul, all without leaving their sweaty concert seat. And that, my friends, is how Jimmy Page used 6 strings, weird tuning, and a haunted riff to tap directly into eternity.